But the fact that this has happened at all today it obviously de-escalates the tension that we were all so concerned about last year. So given the limitations of what was possible, I would say this is not a bad outcome.
And Richard, we are still awaiting to hear the media conference and hear from US President Donald Trump, who you would imagine will be speaking directly about this document and will be getting fielded some questions about, the extent at which this document goes. So we'll be waiting to see that, and we'll bring that to our viewers as it comes in.
That press conference was slated to begin at 2:30. It's now 2:47, so we're running a little bit late.
But it was planned for later on in the afternoon, so bringing it forward may have come up to. Simon, looks like you want to say something.
Nothing specific in there about abductions, right?
No.
And nothing in there about human rights at all. Those two issues don't make the cut.
Haven't made the cut.
He mentioned something about the recovering the POWs, the prisoners of wars, and those missing in action. But this is something also that South Korean President Moon Jae-in brought up, and so maybe he knew that that was going to be in that agreement or not. But recently he did say that if the talks go well, the first thing that South Korea would also go into will be finding those remains of the POWs and the MIAs in North Korea. And also, he wasn't just talking about South Korea's, but he was talking about the international soldiers and the missing in action.
Yeah, so we will dissect this document as we go on this afternoon, and we're also looking out for this news conference. But in the meantime, let's take you back to a moment after the signing ceremony took place at the Capella Hotel on Sentosa Island, where both President Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un sort of shook hands and took sort of their last photo op before the end of the events today.
Negotiating on behalf of his people, a very worthy, very smart negotiator, absolutely. And we had a terrific day, and we learned a lot about each other and about our countries.
What did you learn about him? What did you learn about him, sir?
I learned he's a very talented man. I also learned that he loves his country very much.
When will you see each other again?
I'll see you again.
Will you be meeting again, sir? Will you see each other again?
We'll meet many times. Thank you very much, everybody.
We're getting some reaction now from that signing. China has praised the summit between US President Donald Trump and the North, and I quote, a new history.
Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi told reporters that the fact that the two leaders can sit together and have equal talks has important and positive meaning. He added that the nuclear issue must be resolved through full denuclearization to resolve tensions on the Korean peninsula.
美国和朝鲜两个国家相互对立，甚至是敌对了多达半个多世纪。而今天，两国最高领导人能够坐在一起进行平等的对话，这本身就具有重大和积极的意义。这本身就是在创造新的历史。中方当然表示欢迎和支持，因为这恰恰是我们一直期盼和努力的目标。
This is exactly the goal we had hoped for. Those were the words from Wang Yi there. Yoon-suk, the reaction from China, a very positive one. They have long talked down, or talked up sort of, I suppose, the status quo of things, not rocking the boat, don't do anything sudden. Slow diplomacy is sort of what they've wanted to achieve. So in that regard, this went very well for them.
Yes, it did. And I don't think China really wanted to have this at the same pace as anyone else, really. I think they don't want this to be pushed too fast. They wanted this to be taken in a very slow pace so that the full denuclearization is taken. Does go ahead, but also so that the United States and North Korea don't become too buddy-buddy friends all of a sudden. I think that is the position that China is going to be taking. But I'm very interested to hear what Japan has to say, because like Simon was saying, the issue that really concerns the Japanese government is the abduction And there's no line, not even a word about the abduction issue on that document. So it'll be interesting to see what Japan has to say. But from the South Korean point of view, I'm sure the South Korea will be coming out with a very optimistic, very calling this a historic meeting is what some of the Korean media has started to talk about. But they do point out that this is not just a bilateral issue between the United States and North Korea. It goes much deeper than that, and it does affect the Korean Peninsula. And we see in that agreement, it talks about the security guarantee. But what does that mean? And what is that going to mean for the future of the Korean Peninsula?
I think that's absolutely, because if the details of denuclearization are complicated, the details of providing a security guarantee are also fraught with all sorts of danger and fraught with all sorts of questions for President Trump. I mean, not to sound like, the old Cold Warrior again, but not to have a single message, mention in there of even a working group or something between these two countries on democratic reform or change or human rights issues. Absolutely, completely ignored, not just glossed over, absolutely not mentioned. I mean, that, again, as we were saying before, that does represent a pretty wholesale shift in where American foreign policy has traditionally based itself. And, that's worthy of note, I think.
Yeah, they often say that the devil is in the details, but in this case, there are no details to go on.
There are only details now to develop. I mean, there's
For the lack of details, though, what about the subtext, Simon? Because I want to take you back to what Richard was saying when he talked about Donald Trump, ripping the Canadian PM to shreds after the G7. Peter Navarro, the trade advisor to the US, saying, look, Justin, you stabbed the president in the back.
Special place in hell.
That's right.
Justin Trudeau.
Those were strong fighting words. So what was Donald Trump's message then? Does the signing equal trust? Is Donald Trump telling us, I trust Kim Jong-un?
Look, I think what the Trump administration will tell you, and they've already started saying it, is that the reason why they went so wholesale after Justin Trudeau is not just because obviously what he said in that news conference, for some reason that we don't fully understand, stuck in Donald Trump's craw. They wanted to send a message to North Korea that if Donald Trump was not going to be messed around by Justin Trudeau, he definitely wasn't going to be messed around by Kim Jong-un. But the optics of all of this from a European perspective, for example, are curious, where you now have a president of the United States talking about what a talented man Kim Jong-un is, a man who loves his country very much, that this was, a great conversation. They've established a very special bond between themselves. And this is coming, 4 days after he tore Justin Trudeau to shreds. I mean, that is, again, an astonishing moment. And this is not normal. I mean, I keep having to point out, I feel in my capacity when I'm back in Washington, that what we're witnessing with the Trump administration and its foreign policy is not a logical extension of traditional Republican foreign policy. There is a massive divide between the kind of foreign policy that even George W. Bush, much derided on the world stage for the decision to go into Iraq and Afghanistan and so on, there's just a massive gulf. He seems like an absolute traditional orthodox pursuer of Republican foreign policy versus what we're witnessing here, which is, to some extent, a game of 52-card pickup.
Well, one must be wondering what the Republican Party or members of it must be thinking right now, because don't forget, Lindsey Graham just yesterday said, look, 2 options, it's peace or war.
And that was a stark choice that Lindsey Graham presented, and he speaks as one of the voices of Republican orthodoxy and centrist Republican thought up on Capitol Hill. I mean, John McCain has been much more critical of President Trump's foreign policy and was witheringly critical on Twitter of what took place at the G7 last weekend. But, we were saying that Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump are tied together. The Republicans up on Capitol Hill and Donald Trump are tied together now, and they similarly have to hope that this genuinely leads to results, especially as they, unlike Donald Trump right now, have to worry about whether in many cases they're going to be voted back in November.
Yes, and speaking of President Donald Trump, we are awaiting his media conference. It is expected, or was expected, to take place at 2:30. It is now 2:56. We're going to go for a short break, but we'll be keeping an eye on it and bring it to you as soon as it happens, as Channel News Asia's coverage of the Trump-Kim summit continues.
Stay with us.